There is no way that a 20-year-old young woman should be seeking courtship from older men just so that she can be afforded the luxuries of life or a particular lifestyle. And I'm sad to say that I watched a short video of a young woman saying that she does just that. Ashley Dalton came up on my feed yesterday when I was posting a YouTube video, and I have never watched a full video of hers. I just know that she's one of those people that people love to hate. So I came across this video, and when I realized who it was, I stopped because I was like, oh my goodness, people ask me my opinion about her all the time. And I'm a person, I like to withhold my opinion until I have a fair assessment. And I still don't think that I have a fair assessment. What I can say is everything that I have seen of her at this point, she's very poised. She's a beautiful woman. And I like the way that she speaks, and I like the way that she carries herself. Her message, though, I'm not sure because I have not had enough time to assess it to really have an opinion. So this is not an endorsement of her. This is not saying that I don't agree with her. This is just saying that this literally came across my feed, and I took it as an opportunity to see what it was. I was very interested in it because the first person that came on, like I said, was this 20-year-old girl, and she was basically complaining that she, one, has this desire to date older men because they can afford her this particular lifestyle. And Ashley said what I was thinking, because when the girl said that she was 20, I said to myself, no way, she's 20. She looks a lot older, not in a bad way, not like she looks old in the face, but she just did not look like a 20-year-old girl. She did not have the face of a 20-year-old girl. And Ashley actually told her that. She said, I think that you should slow down, and I think that you should, value yourself, and I think that you should not be allowing these men to suck all the energy out of you to the point where you're going to be washed or you feel washed. And I think that was the perfect way to explain it. And she said it in a very soft and gentle tone. The one thing I can also say about what I've seen from her, I think people's hate is also stemmed from jealousy, because she's a very delicate woman. She doesn't seem to ever just rip people apart. It sounds like she will tell you the truth, but in a very loving and gentle way. Like I said, at least from what I've seen from her. And I do want to take time to explore her a little bit more so that I can give a fair assessment. But from what I've seen, I think she's very soft, gentle, very feminine, and very poised. Again, like I said, but that's what she explained to the young girl. And what I wanted to focus on was the very first comment that I saw on the video was from a man. And this is what he said. He said, I'm a proud girl dad. My girls are around her age, and they are 100% taken care of financially by me! ! They are both in college full time. I pay 100% of their tuition and apartment. They have summer jobs, but I provide 100% of their spending and monetary needs. They don't need a man, he puts that in quotation marks, at this young age to provide any necessities for them! My wife plays a big part because we've been married for 20 plus years, and she chose a man who is a provider and protector of his family. My point: choose men for your daughters even before you have them. Otherwise, your 20-year-old daughter will be on a live looking like she's 40 and stressed. And this stood out to me because I talk all the time about this, and I think that this also ties into exactly what I was saying when we had this conversation about allowing your young adult children to stay home. Your young adult children will be chewed up and spit out by this world if they don't leave your home prepared. And one of the ways that women fall into that trap is they get from under their parents and they have to take care of themselves, and they start looking to men to fill those gaps. So what I love about this comment is that this man, even though his children did go away, he is still taking care of them. And he shouts out his wife because he's absolutely right. You as a woman have to have the ability and the standard to understand what it is that you're signing yourself up when you allow a man to choose you. You don't have to say yes just because he asks you. You need to look out for things and to see if this is the type of man that you would be proud to call your husband and the father of your children. And we can see these signs very early on. It's not always going to be perfect. Sometimes the men do change. I understand that. Sometimes they're manipulative and they conceal who they really are. But we're talking about generally what happens? A lot of times when the man is turned out to be this bad man and oh, woe is me, the women knew what they were getting themselves into. They just turned a blind eye to it. And this post and this conversation just made me think so much about this. The reason that I say that we should allow our adult children to stay home is to protect them. Because imagine this young woman who is 20 years old, had parents that loved her and decided, you can stay home, and while you work your job or while you go to school, we will continue to take care of you. What does she need out there? What is it that she needs from a man, except somebody that she might genuinely be interested in, but she doesn't need him for his resources. She doesn't need him for his money. She doesn't need to pimp herself out to get the finer things in life, to pay her rent, so to speak. And we kind of glaze over this, and a lot of the parents were, when I made this post, were hyper focused on the fact that, oh, well, they got to learn how to start paying for something anyhow. They got to learn how to start taking care of themselves eventually. And it's just so passive and so dismissive, and it almost makes me think that people hate their children. And one of my friends actually said that, and at first I was hesitant to agree with her. But when we got down to the nuts and bolts of the conversation, I did conclude that if you refuse to help your children under the premise that they should know how to take care of themselves by the time they turn 18, you actually hate them. I think you don't care about them. I think that if you believe, sure, my children, I talk all the time about the ways that I just life school them. I prepare them for things. They are so responsible, and they're still so young. They know how to do things. They know how to fend for themselves. They know how to shop. They don't need me to do much. Sometimes when we go to the coffee shop, I let them go inside and get my coffee for me. I allow them to do adult things. Go in there and grab the dry cleaning. Here's the ticket. Right? Just simple things. You can allow your children to do things. You can allow them to experience responsibility. And I think that there's a way, and I have seen it. I've seen people do this for their children. I think that there is a way to allow your adult children to stay home and to afford them the opportunity to actually leave into the adult world with money and stable finances. And the way that that looks is, obviously, you're not going to encourage your children to do this if they're not working on themselves. If you're not going to school, if you're not working, why do you need to stay here and get yourself together if you're just going to sit on the couch? No, that's called living off of me. What I'm referring to is, again, your children go from being 18, where their environment was completely controlled by other adults, and suddenly now they're the adult responsible for themselves, and you think that they're going to go out there and have it all figured out? I don't think so. So what it looks like is allowing them to transition in your home. If they're going to school at a local college, allow them to stay in the same bedroom that they grew up in the last 18 years. Like, I don't understand why that's problematic if you have to pay those bills anyway. They go to school. If they get a job, you encourage them to save their money. You help them to set up parameters. Quite honestly, by the time they're 18, they should have their own ideas of money management. The idea is not for them to learn to manage their money in that transitionary period. The idea is for them to have a stable home environment where they don't have to worry about providing for themselves while they learn to be an adult and while they gather their skills to function as an adult on their own. And by the time they're 24, 25, they should be good. 26, 27, maybe depending on what type of advanced degree they're getting. But that looks like, let's say you start college at 18. You get your undergraduate degree by the time you're 21, 22. You go from undergraduate into the workforce at 22. You stay home, work your job for 2 years. By the time you leave, you should have a year's worth of salary, because how much money are you really spending if you don't have any bills? You might have 2 years worth of a salary. Maybe you go to grad school. So you turn 22 and you start grad school. You're finished grad school by 26. You work your job, 25, 26, 27, you're on your way out the door. And I also think that something that we don't talk about is staying home lessens your chance of getting into foolishness. You're probably not sleeping around as much. You're probably not having as much premarital sex, if at all. You're not going to be making these types of decisions because you have to go home every night. You're not going to be doing things that you should not be doing, and you're not highly unsupervised. And I know that part makes people feel icky, and they're like, well, they're adults and they should be able to do these things. They're adults who are living in the homes of their parents. So And we also need to reinvent what we consider to be fun, because just because you're a young adult does not mean that you need to be wasting away your life in the clubs and partying. Do what you want, but I'm just saying that that's not the only option for fun, right? And so I think that we also need to consider that the fact that when your child is able to focus solely on their future and to develop themselves without the financial pressures, they can do well. They can stay home with you while you continue to provide for them and encourage them to do responsible things with their money, obviously. But then think about this. Now that they have had this leg up and now they're in their mid 20s and they have a career and stable income, your young men are now more able to go out there and to start seeking a wife. And they can do so from a place of not being financially strained. They can have confidence in being able to go out there and provide for their family without financial strain. Again, you're not coddling them. You're not encouraging them to just blow all their money, but you're providing them the ability to stay home and to maintain stable income until it is time for them to go out into the world. And the reason I brought this conversation up, obviously the young lady. So your daughter who stays home and does the same thing, when she does decide to move, and maybe she doesn't want to stay home until she gets married. Maybe now she wants to get an apartment, whatever. I have a friend who stayed home literally until she got married. She did not move from her parents' house until she got married. Her brothers did the same thing, actually. And let's say in that situation, your daughter does leave and she goes to get an apartment. Well, if she's been working for a couple of years while she stayed home, she has money. She has a savings. At least she should, right? And if she does not have those things after you've afforded her this opportunity, that's not necessarily your problem, because that is her carelessness, especially if you've prepared her for this time, you've coached her on this, and you know that you've done your part. You don't have to feel bad about her and her shortcoming if she did not take full advantage of that and if you raised her in that regard. But when she does go out and she has her own money and she has the savings and she can take care of herself, she does not have to now resort to a man who potentially could manipulate her and take advantage of her. She doesn't have to rely on him to take care of her. She can actually maintain herself and therefore wait for a man who is worthy of her time and attention. She doesn't have to settle. She doesn't have to worry about, well, how am I going to pay for this? I need to get me a man to take care of me. And that desperation leads you to terrible decisions. So I thought it was an interesting thing to unpack. I only watched the beginning of the video because I just wanted to hear that young lady's story. But I also just wanted to come back to the fact that we continue to have this conversation. And it seems like every week I'm getting more to talk about in that regard, and I'm getting more talking points for it, because I do think that we glaze over the topic so much and we don't spend enough time considering exactly what it means to be able to afford your children that opportunity. So many things can happen, right? Like so many people, and I think a lot of the parents are speaking from hurt and their own trauma and they don't even realize it. If you're a parent and you're in your 40s or 50s and you've struggled your whole life and you're continuing to struggle and get your life together now, and you've been on your own since you were 17, why do you want to pass that on to your children if that has not worked for you? You have still not recovered financially from being on your own since 17. You had children earlier than you were supposed to. You've been scrambling and living paycheck to paycheck for the past 30 years. And you want to put your children through the same thing. And that's what scares me, because that is very selfish. You had these children, you brought them into the world, and you're not abandoning them just because they turned 18. I understand children that don't want to, listen. They want to do what they want to do. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about your children who still need you. Your children who are doing everything that they can to take care of themselves and move themselves forward, but they do still need the support. Why would you rob them of that? It doesn't make any sense. It does not make any sense. And as I said, you would be paying your rent, your mortgage anyway. And I've heard really good examples of how that could look. Like I've seen in the comments of that video, somebody actually said what they decided to do with their family is they do charge the kids rent, right? But the rent that they charge them, they put it in a high yield saving account. And so when the children leave, they all have these accounts where they can now take their finances and go and do what they need to do. And I think that that's something that's very beautiful. I know everybody doesn't agree with that, but you know. So one of the things that I thought was interesting was someone said she left home because she was kicked out at 18, and it was the best and worst thing to happen to her because her mom was a narcissist, but she struggled to survive. She said she struggled to survive. And I asked her, I said, how long would you say that it took you to get to a point of feeling secure? She said, I haven't yet, but the Lord has carried me through now. I'm 27. She got kicked out at 18 and she's 27 and she still has not recovered to the point of feeling secure. She says she just moved to a new city and state for a better life and more opportunities, and she feels like she's breaking generational curses. And she did make a video about it. I actually follow her. Her name is Sumaria. I don't know how to say her name. Y'all know how the internet is. But I follow her now. She's such a beautiful soul. And she shares really, really good experiences and really good life stories. But even someone else, which was ironic, but someone else shared his story with this, but I think he deleted his comment. He talked about how we're soft as a society, and he's been on his own since he was 12. And this is what I mean by, like, some of us as parents have this concept of, like, if I had to struggle, then you should have to struggle too. And it's just a really scary thought because it's unhinged. It's completely unhinged. So you being on your own since you were 14, knowing how hard that was and having survived it, want to put your children through the same thing. And he said it under the guise of, like, character development. And that's why we're soft, because we never have to do anything. But as I mentioned, there are ways to teach your children things. We're a family that owns a business, right? And so there are certain elements of running our business that my children know how to do. They learn how to be responsible. They learn how to cook. They know how to clean the house. Everybody has a responsibility. Everybody has something to do. They know how to wash the car. And the reason they know how to wash the car is because they're the filthy animals that dirty up my car every week. So they better know how to wash it and clean it and vacuum it, okay? But we teach children responsibility in a variety of ways. As a homeschool family, one of the things that I teach my children is time management. We have a very structured environment, but it's also very flexible. So we don't start school at the exact same time every day, but we start around the same time every day. When you have independent study, if you don't finish your independent study work when it's time for us to all come together, well, now you have to finish your independent study when you go off back by yourself, because you're not about to hold the rest of us up. You also will have consequences for not getting your work done on time, because you lose the privilege of being able to do what you want with your free time, because now you have to do the work that you didn't do. And everybody has responsibilities every day. Everybody knows how to manage the money that they have. Everybody has to tithe. You give your 10% to church every week. Okay? Everybody knows that there are certain things that mommy and daddy will be happy to buy for you, but there are certain things you're going to be responsible for buying for yourself. And if you want them, I guess you got to save your money to get it. So we teach our children how to function with everyday actions, not just with money. Money is important, and we should be teaching them financial literacy as they grow anyway. So that's why I said it's not just about, allowing your children to stay home so that they can learn how to budget their money. They should already know how to budget their money by the time they turn 18. The problem that I have is, what money are they leaving your house with when they turn 18? Their first paycheck from McDonald's? Where are they going to go with that? And I get it. Some people figure it out, and some people argue that that's how you get it out the mud, and that's the way that you become successful. But I just think that we need to be less comfortable passing on struggle to our children. I think that we need to remember to raise them in respect and honor so that they can have reverence for us, and so that they cannot take advantage of us, because so many people have also expressed their fear of being taken advantage of. But my question is, who did you raise? You raised these children. Why did you raise them in a way that makes you question whether or not they're going to respect you? Why did you raise them in a way that they get old and they're comfortable in disrespecting you and not honoring your rules and acting like a spoiled brat? Because I think that that's part of it too. Too much coddling in their youth, too much spoiling and just handing everything to them is problematic. But I want you to know that in their adulthood, in their young adulthood transition, you allowing them to stay home is not handing them anything. It's not handing them anything, because they still have to be responsible with the opportunity that you're giving them. And you should only be doing this for your children if they are continuing their education, or if they're continuing to grow in a career, or they're going to trade school, or they're getting their life together in some regard. I'm not at all encouraging you to do this to children that are like, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to sit here. No, I don't encourage that, because what is that going to do for them? Nothing. So we have to also remember like what we're talking about when we have these conversations. There was another lady who said, I didn't leave until I was 30, which was the year I bought my house with my husband. I got married at 25. We lived in the finished basement of my mom's house for 5 years. And again, the crazy thing is there are other ethnicities of people that have watched this video and they're like, yeah, that's what we do. Oh yeah, of course. And even when we think about like Nigerian families and the traditional things that happen, they have the big wedding, but it's also normal for the parents of the groom to buy the house, or to give their son a house, or to build their son a house, or to gift their son a down payment. And something that I learned in the banking industry was just how many families do things like that. There are families that get houses. When they buy their first house, people are gifting them money so that they can afford a down payment. I think that part of the problem and part of the reason we're so disconnected and we don't like this idea, and I rarely talk specifically to a race of people, but when I say we in this video, I'm talking about Black people. We are so traumatized by money, and we cannot fathom the idea, and also we're so individualistic. We cannot fathom the idea of coming together to do anything. So it's very icky for us to think about or imagine living in a home as an adult with our parents, living in a home as an adult with your adult children. You're ready for them to get out because you want your space back. You as an adult child are ready to go because you don't want to live under your parents' rules anymore. But it's something that is so damaging to us. This shrinking community that we experience is doing nothing but crippling everybody and making us all poor. That's it. Because as you continue to do everything in isolation, you want to raise your kids by yourself with no help. How's that working out for you? How is it paying for childcare all the time? Childcare isn't cheap, because I do pay for childcare when I need it. I have a babysitter, but I usually have a babysitter in the daytime hours when my mom is not available. And sometimes when I just don't feel like bringing my kids to my mom's house, I'll call the babysitter. But my point is, we isolate ourselves so much. We think so individualistically that we are unable to come together and do things together. We cannot fathom the idea of gifting our children a down payment for a home. We cannot fathom the idea of gifting our children a home. We can't even fathom the idea of allowing our adult children to stay home so that they can get themselves together before they go out into the world. We can't fathom the idea of them getting married and staying in the home with us with their spouse. It's icky. But I did want to continue to highlight some positive comments from this post. One of them was, we bought our house for our kids. They're still here, college grads and all, until they're ready. Mine are 25 and 30 and 13. I'm a pediatric dentist, and hubby is a Mercedes-Benz engineer. We don't need their money. In other words, they're honored to care for their kids and to be there for them and to continue to bless them in any way that they can. And I think that it's also important to note that we are meant to be communal as people. It's beautiful to be able to live in isolation and have your own things, but we tend to do that way before we're ready. There's no reason why you should have $1,400 in your pocket and you go pay $1,200 to get an apartment and you have $200 left. Go home. And that is what I mean by this process. It's really, my suggestion is just meant to help us to all do better. Imagine 3 adult children living in the home with their parents and saving all of their money, and they all start working, and let's say you're earning at least $40,000 a year and your parents are paying for everything, you're probably going to spend $10,000 a year if your parents are paying for everything. You shouldn't spend more than that, I don't think. Because what you spending your money on if your parents paying for everything? But imagine you stay home for 2 to 3 years. Now you can leave home when you do with $60,000 or more. And that is all I'm saying. Just afford your children an opportunity to give a leg up, and I'm sure they'd be happy to bless you when you need it, if necessary. And somebody said, I stayed home until the day I got married, and I want the same for my daughter especially. I think it should be something that's normal, and we shouldn't be so up in arms about it. There was a family, she said, our adult children are home. My husband and I don't ask them to pay our bills. Our goal is for our children to be financially prepared to be on their own. Yes, they have to pay their car and their phone. And so someone asked, they don't pay at least an electric bill or that they use or part of the food that they eat. And I think that that's a snarky comment because, again, why does that bother you? It's not your home. Why does that bother you? And I think we also have, this is something I didn't want to say, but I'm going to say it. We have this mentality sometimes in impoverished communities where our children are our meal tickets. And when we can no longer benefit financially from our children through tax returns and financial services like welfare, we don't deem them as valuable. So now you want your adult children who you can no longer get compensated for to start compensating you for the money that you would be missing. And I just think that is completely unfair, completely inappropriate, because these are your children and you brought them into the world. And the least you can do is allow them to continue to use your resources so that they can get themselves together, because it really does not benefit any of us to send our children out into the world before they're ready so that they can amass a bunch of debt because they don't have money to cover their expenses. And now we're all in poverty. It's just crazy. And I can understand if you do want to charge your children something. I said that. I think that's between you and your children. I don't think it should be something so crippling that they can go outside and just do it on their own. Right? And somebody even said a lot of cultures let the husband and wife stay at the parents' house. I think that's true. My mom actually lived with us for a little while. And I loved it. She only left because she wanted to go and have a place for my sister and my brother to stay. But I just, it's something that I want to afford to my children. And we've had that conversation where they're all going to be able to stay home for as long as they need to. And I'm confident that they will not need to stay in my home until they're 40. They just won't. It just doesn't make sense in the way that we're raising them. It doesn't make sense in the principles that we're teaching them. It doesn't make sense in the goals and the aspirations that they have, that they will still be living at home at 40. And if they are, it's not because they don't have the money to leave. It's because they don't want to leave. But nah, you got to get out of my house by 40, sis. No, but I think that it's worth exploring this topic, and I love that I was able to see that example so that I could come back here and talk about it, because I do think that it's a problem. I do think that the culture that we live in, where we glamorize, what's the word? We glamorize pimping ourselves out for financial gain. And we glamorize it because it's a need, but we're ashamed of it, so we try to make it cute. We try to make it an aesthetic, and we try to say that we're doing it because we want to. But really, these young women, if they didn't have to sleep around with multiple men for money, I'm sure they wouldn't be doing it. If they didn't have to dress a certain way to bait and trap a certain style of men or a certain caliber of men that had money to give to them, I'm sure they wouldn't. Let's be real. Nobody wants to pimp themselves out in any regard. Most of us barely want to get up and go to the jobs that we have, let alone be sweet and kind to a person just so they can give you some money. And all I'm saying is we can avoid having our children go through that if we just afford them the opportunity to stay home a little bit longer while they transition into adulthood. Because I know I don't want my daughter being pimped out at 20. And I'm saying pimped out like she's not literally sleeping around for money, but she's saying that she's dating men who are much older than her so that she can have access to things. And I can almost guarantee you that those men are not just dating her. They're not just taking her to dinner. They're getting dessert after too. So, yes. See you in the next episode.